Hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking in the Word. Hey, we are concluding today and tomorrow the book of Exodus. Okay, we're doing the last chapter, which is chapter 40. There's only 40 chapters in Exodus, but today's episode 127 and episode 128 is tomorrow. We are spending these two chapters talking about the conclusion. We're wrapping everything up with the book of Exodus. When we started out the book, it's been a long journey. When we started out the book, the people were in Egypt. Okay, they were slaves in Egypt, and then God delivered them from that. Huge story there just in itself. We conclude the book by them building this tabernacle, the whole tabernacle complex that we have pictured here. By them building that, today we're going to be looking at them now using that. Okay, so we talked about yesterday the final inspection for it. Now today it's going to be in use. Okay, so everything involved with setting it up to be used. It's not something, if I go camping and I set up a tent, it takes me 15 minutes at the most to put the tent up. This was not like that. Okay, this was a very it was portable, yeah. Everything was designed to, pull apart and be carried to the next place. But it was a very complex thing, very detailed. But here, let's talk about today. It's called Exodus Concludes with the Tabernacle in Use. Okay? And this is chapter 40 of Exodus, verses 1 through 33. It says this: Then the Lord said to Moses, Set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, on the first day of the first month. Place the Ark of the Covenant law in it, and shield the ark with the curtain. Bring in the table and set up what belongs on it. Then bring in the lampstand and set up the lamps. Place the gold altar and the incense in front of the Ark of the Covenant, and put the curtains at the entrance of the tabernacle. Place the altar of burnt offering in front of the entrance to the tabernacle and the tent of meeting. Place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it. Set up the courtyard around it, and put the curtains at the entrance to the courtyard. Okay, so this stuff here, with everything we've talked about, they were building it. It was all assembled. It might have been, set up at different areas for them to set it up. But now they're all putting it together, so it's all where it's supposed to be. Okay, so they're putting actual, they have the lampstand, so they're putting actual oil in there. They're actually, lighting it, and then they're going to be using the altars and everything else. It's actually now going to be used. We just read there's actually going to be water here in the place where the priests wash. Okay, so everything is now being in use. Verse 9. Take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it. Consecrate it and all the furnishings, and it will be holy. Then anoint the altar of burnt offering and all the utensils. Consecrate the altar, and it will be most holy. Anoint the basin and its stand, and consecrate them. Bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance to the tent of meeting, and wash them with water. Then dress Aaron in the sacred garments, anoint him, and consecrate him, so he may serve me as priest. Bring his sons and dress them in tunics. Anoint them just as you anointed the father, so that they may serve as priests. Their anointing will be to the priesthood, and that will continue throughout the generations. Moses did everything just as the Lord had commanded him. How about that? The people had done everything as the Lord had commanded him, building the tabernacle here. Now Moses is doing the same. Moses did everything just as the Lord had commanded them. Okay? The verse before that talks about the priest. The priest was not an elected thing. It wasn't chosen by a vote or anything else. It was a family thing, and you were in line to be a priest if you were a descendant of Aaron from the tribe of Levi. So a person from the tribe of Judah was not going to be a priest. Okay, and so these were the priests. Another thing I read, I finished reading this. Oh, threw my book on the ground. How about that? I finished reading this book here today, Seeing Christ in the Tabernacle. In this book, he talks about at the end the different festivals and stuff like that, which I hadn't paid as much attention to in the past as I should have. But then it also talks about the Levites and the priests. And the thing that he had pointed out in this book is the Levites were not going to war. You had the other tribes that were out fighting, going to war, but the Levites were kind of pacifists because they were, in charge of the ark and everything. So they had that. And then a fact here too is later on when they fall into sin and God says, hey, you're going to wander in the wilderness here for 40 years. And those people, those warriors and stuff, they all were to die. The Levites were not part of that group, okay? The Levites, were taking care of the tabernacle and stuff. And in fact, the priests, you can see the names here. The priests that were descendants of Aaron that were priests, they were still priests even after those 40 years. When they went into the Promised Land, they were still priests. They weren't wiped out. They were their own thing. They weren't fighting. They weren't warriors. Okay? Interesting thing right here from this book. Let's keep reading here. Verse 17. So the tabernacle was set up on the first day of the first month in the second year. When Moses set up the tabernacle, he put the bases in place, erected the frames, inserted the crossbars, and set up the posts. Then he spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering over the tent as the Lord commanded him. He took the tablets of the covenant law and placed them in the ark and attached the poles of the ark and put the atonement cover over it. Then he brought the ark into the tabernacle and hung the shielding curtain and shielded the ark of the covenant of law, as the Lord commanded him. Moses placed the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle outside the curtain, and set out the bread on it before the Lord as the Lord had commanded him. He placed the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle, and set up the lamps before the Lord as the Lord commanded him. Moses placed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the curtain, and burned fragrant incense on it as the Lord commanded him. Then he put the curtain at the entrance of the tabernacle. He set the altar of the burnt offering near the entrance of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and offered on it burnt offerings and grain offerings as the Lord commanded him. He placed the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it for washing. And Moses and Aaron and his sons used it to wash their hands and their feet. They washed whenever they entered the tent of meeting and approached the altar as the Lord had commanded them. That's that little piece right there, which was actually a big piece. That's where they washed as they came in. Remember what that was made out of? It was made out of mirrors that the women had donated. So it had reflection to it. Verse 33, Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle and the altar and put the curtains at the tent entrance of the courtyard, and Moses finished the work. Done. Okay? Moses finished the work. So that concludes the first part of that chapter of Exodus 40. We will conclude with the final part of Exodus 40 tomorrow. But it concludes, this section here concludes with the tabernacle in use, okay? We started out the book of Exodus with them in slavery, okay? And there was really no way for them to worship the Lord and stuff. They are rescued out of Egypt. They're brought, through the wilderness here. And they're still in the wilderness on their way to the Promised Land. But God is building these people into the people he wants them to be, giving them the law, and then also making this tabernacle for them. And so it concludes with this tabernacle now in use. Everything should be rosy from here, but it won't turn out to be that way because people are full of sin. All right, thank you for watching. I will conclude Exodus tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you then. Lord's blessing to you.